Welcome to Golden Mastermind Seminars Radio with your host, Jeffrey Combs.
Good afternoon, Jeffrey Combs. Take two on Facebook Live. I just was notified that no one was hearing the volume, so I'm at take two. Topic for today's Facebook Live is the psychology of habit. Breathe, release, and let go. Empowering habits, disempowering habits, habits that are habitual, situations that we do over and over to fulfill a neurochemical craving that we are emotionally addicted to. Breathe, release, and let go. It is my privilege and pleasure to be here with you on 2 for Tuesday Facebook Live. Breathe, release, and let go. I'm doing a test here with my assistant, Henry. Can you hear me, Henry?
Yes.
All right, so I am live now. So Henry is watching. Good to have all of you here on Tuesday, Facebook Live, the psychology of habit. And so I had some technical difficulties a moment ago, and now I'm back on the psychology of habit. Just a moment ago, I was covering this book right here. This book is Game Changer, The Map of Consciousness Explained, and I was covering the content right here, The Experiencer. So the experiencer is the leading edge of the ego, also known as the payoff. And we will recreate, this becomes habitual for many people, the last minute syndrome. They pull it off at the last minute. They wait to the last minute. They live in overwhelm. They live in a state of fight or flight. Diane, can you hear me now? So let me know. I had Henry do some technical adaptations, and we are now back on live. Topic for today's Facebook Live is really the power of habit, the psychology of habit. And bad habits are what many people live in. They recreate a situation to fulfill a feeling. They live in an overwhelmed state of anxiety, fear, and doubt. They live in their upper body in fight or flight. And then they feed those feelings with bad habits. Food, drugs, alcohol, pornography, avoidance, procrastination, and a multitude of other situations to avoid sobriety, to avoid consciousness, to avoid recovery, and most importantly, to avoid being responsible. The most disempowering habit that I assist my clients with is that so many people recreate the same situation over and over to fulfill the same set of feelings. And if this is you, this content is specifically for you. It's called the psychology of habit. The ego will chronically say, how do I? Well, that's what the ego does. The ego, the lower self that lives in bad habits, likes to pull it off at the last minute. The ego likes to hold on to stuff. This is why so many people cannot get their car in their garage, because their garage becomes a storage unit. And if your garage has become a storage unit, what is it that you do habitually that keeps you in that state, in that space? Well, typically, most people can't let go of stuff and things they hold on to. Their drawers are filled, their life is filled, their closets are a wreck. They live in absolute chaos. How many of you grew up in a household where your parents could not get their car in the garage or chose not to get their car in the garage, and the garage became a storage unit? How many of you had a set of parents who the attic was full and there was no system to the attic, and it would just put stuff up there? Or closets were like this, or the refrigerator was like this, or multitudes of situations. So if you have habits that habitually you are unorganized, that is one of the most challenging habits to let go of. If your habits lead to stuffed feelings and you continue to feed those habits with food, alcohol. I only have a couple a day, someone recently told me a couple of glasses of wine a day, only a couple. Well, habitually, they told me they drank every night. So a couple is 14 a week. 14 a week is, just look how many that is a month. So it means habitually that would be a maintenance alcoholic, someone who habitually has a couple and justifies it. Take a look at your habits and be honest with yourself. What habits do you possess that creates the most disempowering feelings? So the feelings that will take you to anxiety, fear, and doubt are anger, hate, resentment, frustration, disappointment, and rage. That's the anger family. Abandonment, rejection, overwhelmed feelings, grief, apathy, pride, and these guilt and shame. These are the emotions that lead to bad habits, and bad habits are also fostered by not feeling good enough. And as you begin to let go of your feelings, specifically anger, entitlement, justification, validation, and you're not where you should be, and you continue to habitually recreate the same situation, you will fulfill the same set of feelings. This book right here is David Hawkins, written in 2016, 4 years after Dr. David Hawkins' death. This content is gold. So right here, this chapter, the experiencer, the leading edge of the ego. This will really assist you to understand the psychology of habit. And habitually, what many people do is they chronically avoid. It's the most disempowering habit. So right now I'm covering the habits that disempower you. There's a reason that most of society lives in these, and then there is a psychology of structure that you can learn the inner game of letting go, which is the separation between the feelings that habitually take you to anxiety, fear, and doubt, the mechanism of letting go, and then a systemized approach to changing your life, improving your life one day at a time. That will require habits. And if you're a winger, you chronically wing it. You don't have a set time you go to the gym. You don't have a set time you eat. You don't have a set time to set your times. I mean, this is what many people do, is they wing it. They are chronic wingers, and they're all over the place. However, most of the world can work for someone else. And then they oftentimes will say, I hate my job. Well, that's understandable. But I've seen so many people who hate their job, they can't build their own business because their habits are disempowering. They're so overwhelmed. They're so disorganized. They're so in their head. They're in these spaces in validation, justification, and explanation. They're going to do it when they get around to it. You want to look at the most perpetual habit that disempowers you. Number one is procrastination. Procrastination is avoidance. Procrastination avoidance is anchored in not feeling good enough. It's also sidelined to rebellion. Many people rebel against their own success because they are not certain if they can maintain and stay in control of being successful. When you let go of the feelings of trying to control an outcome that hasn't happened, when you separate your feelings from the events that shaped them, when you focus on improving your habits. How do you improve a habit? First of all, by acceptance. You accept the fact that your habits or a habit is disempowering, and then you go about systematically improving that through what is called repetition and experience. An athlete, an entertainer, a dancer, a musician becomes very good through the repetition and experience. There's the talent. You can have the talent, but if you're not enhancing the talent by habitually practicing over and over through the repetition and experience, through the creativity and the innovation, then you will continue to recreate the same situation to fulfill the same set of feelings. When you surrender means that you are letting go. When you surrender to your higher power, you surrender your pride. Pride is what keeps many people habitually recreating the same situation over and over, because the lower self-ego does not want to let go. I don't know why I'm angry. I don't know why I'm this. I don't know why I'm always overwhelmed. Well, you do know, because you're the one who is creating it. So there's a series of events that create a neurochemical bond to neurons that wire and fire. These show up in what is called the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is the neocortex of the brain that goes down your neck, down your back, around your hip, and connects underneath your gut. And so the gut feeling that you're not receiving is because habitually you check out And that's where most people live. This is why very few people ever become skilled at the highest paid profession in the world, sales. Because the ego turns selling into rejection. The reptilian brain sees lions and tigers. And then in brain fog, you're going to have challenges discerning from, am I being rejected? Am I being ghosted? Am I being gaslighted? Or is the person not interested? And when you're able to create that distinction, you can improve on your habits. Habitually, most of the world avoids changing because change is perceived to be painful, when really living in the pain of regret is one of the most common feelings that people hang on to, and regret is self-rejection. I should be further along. I wished I would have done this. So now when you're in that type of regret, now you're rock bottoming out in apathy. David Hawkins covers it in this book on the chapter, The Experiencer, the Leading Edge of the Ego. The ego wants experiences. It wants pleasure. It wants instant gratification. So changing a habit that the ego says is hard, is difficult, well, the ego will avoid that because it's not perceived as pleasure. Even though that habit could be empowering, living in a disempowering habit for the lower self actually is pleasure. This is very challenging for most of the world to grasp because they say, well, that doesn't make sense. It's not about making sense. It's understanding the neurochemical response, the trauma bond that is created by holding on to the same set of feelings. This is why many people habitually stay in dysfunctional relationships. They stay in trauma bonds, panic patterns, and they continue to attract narcissistic personalities to their reality to fulfill the habitual habit of not being good enough. So this is what many people do. They recreate the same situation, fulfill the same set of feelings habitually to avoid the responsibility of changing, the responsibility of succeeding, the responsibility of sobriety, recovery, and then ultimately many people will not surrender their pride to God because they would rather hold on and silently suffer. And that's the razor's edge of the ego. The ego is the lower self that habitually wants to be a victim, wants to hold on, wants to struggle, wants to attract. See, the mouth moves, but the body doesn't move with it because there's a disconnection between the vagus nerve and your second brain, the gut. And so if you live in fight or flight, you're not able to access your intuition. You're not able to access your higher power. You're not able to access higher consciousness. You're not able to access God. You're not able to surrender to the Christ within because you're so prideful that you would rather struggle than succeed. And unfortunately, this is where a lot of the world lives. This is where a lot of your family lives. This is where a lot of the people in your circle of influence lives. This is where a lot of your teammates, this is where a lot of your customers and clients. So success is based on a principle called the law of the few. Only a few people will go to a 12-step meeting every day and pick up a chip. I did it every day for multiple years, and back to back, I now have 35 years of sobriety, one day at a time. In drugs and alcohol, I have another 14 years of sobriety in codependent recovery, one day at a time. So that is habitual. However, very few people will do this because then they want to have a cheat day. They don't want to stay in a good habit. They want to have some instant gratification. And that is called pleasure. And then the ego goes, I don't know why I do this. This is just crazy. This just doesn't make sense. I don't know how I got this much debt. I don't know why I'm so overwhelmed. I don't know why I feel this way. This is how the ego will justify, validate, and explain itself, not really embracing the habitual habit of an empowering habit. Empowering habits lead to a different level of spiritual, emotional energy. But the ego doesn't want to take that on because there's a lot of anxiety about, can I do it back to back 2 days in a row? You don't understand my life is very complicated. You don't understand that I have a lot of obligations. You don't understand that I have a lot of details and duties. Well, I do understand because I've been a business owner myself for 40 plus years, and I do understand what is required to be and stay sober for 35 years, one day at a time, practicing the simple discipline of no more cheat days. When there are no more cheat days, you're changing your habits. There's no more cheat days, the pleasure wouldn't be worth the pain. I've told people I haven't had a dessert since I'm a teenager, and many people go, "You're crazy. You're out of your mind. Not even one." I go, "No, it's not. It doesn't inspire me. My brain doesn't operate on that." I drank alcohol every day for 14 years until I reached the rock bottom of the pleasure isn't worth the pain. Breathe, release, and let go. James, thank you very much. That's very kind of you. I deeply appreciate your endorsement. Kaylee, Joe, good to see you. Michelle Nestler, awesome spending quality time with you at Millionaire Blueprint. Dennis Bland, always a pleasure to have you on Facebook Lives. Janet, my condolences. I am so with you, my sister. 2024 is going to be your year. Jose Andres, always good to have you on my Facebook Live. Josh Shea, my former client. Sarge Pollock, who else we have here? We have Charlie Red, Charlie, my brother. Jonathan Hatcher, Jesse James, my LA homeboy. Suzanne, Diane, Jim Craycroft, Carlene, I believe, and of course Hunter. Thank all of you for being here this afternoon on the psychology of habit. Charles Duhigg wrote a really good book called The Psychology of Habit. It's a really good book. If you don't have this book, it is definitely a must. The chapter on the leading edge of the ego. So in wrapping up the content today, the simplicity of habit is this. What you're doing is changing a behavior. Changing a behavior is based on repetition and experience, meaning that you commit to go back-to-back days without. You commit to back-to-back days of being able to let go. I had a client attend one of my events over the weekend. He fasted for 100 days without food, a water fast, released 160 pounds. And he encountered a lot of criticism. People told him he was crazy, he was going to blow away, he's going to dry up, you're going to starve, you're going to die. I mean, this is what you listen to this is what you're going to encounter when you have the courage to face yourself, when you have the courage to face your anxiety, fear, and doubt, when you have the courage to be your best self. There are going to be people who are going to be offended, and they're going to be offended that you have the courage to want to change. And these are the people that's going to be in your habitual state that you're able to let them go. Now, the old ego is going to go, well, they're not that bad of people. Well, maybe just one. Maybe I can just have one. Maybe I can just have one burger. No, the pleasure wouldn't be worth the pain. Maybe I can just have one drink, or, well, I got a headache, so I'm going to use some over-the-counter sleeping pills. That's what I'm going to do tonight. And hey, that's not pharmaceutical. Yes, but it's mood altering. And so, once again, when the pleasure isn't worth the pain, there are no relapses. And when you have that courage, then relapsing is not an option. When you have the intestinal fortitude, but see, here's what many people do. They have this seasonal situation. So it's the holidays, so I'm going to splurge a little. It's the holidays. It's going to be really difficult because there's going to be so many options. So the ego singles holidays out, and the ego singles birthdays out. And the ego will also have these seasonal situations. Well, with what's going on with the weather, it's very gloomy out. I'm going to have something to keep me excited because the ego wants to experience pleasure. Now, there's nothing wrong with pleasure, but when you're coming from the pleasure-pain syndrome, which is the duality of black, white, right, wrong, good, bad, when you live in that energy, then you're going to want to spike, and you're going to want something that gives you that instant gratification. When you live in higher consciousness, you don't seek pleasure, you don't seek instant gratification, because you are good enough. You're able to methodically, systematically be able to have back-to-back great days where you are no longer the mind-body connection to the events that shape the feelings. You're able to breathe, release, and let go. Changing a habit is based on repetition and experience. It's based on the one-day habit. Can you go one day without saying kinda or guess? Can you go one day without getting overwhelmed? Can you go one day being organized? Can you go 1 day without, can you go 1 day of exercise? Can you commit to it? Can you just pick 1 day? Can you get a 15-gallon bag out and throw away everything you possibly can in 15 minutes? That's the 15-minute habit. Can you do that 1 day? Can you do it 7 days? Can you do it 28 days? That would be a week. Can you do it 90 days? That would be a quarter. Can you do it 6 months? That's half the year. Can you do it 1 full year? 1 full year of sobriety. Could you do that 1 day at a time? Could you do that? Could you prospect today if you avoided it yesterday? Can you commit to however many phone calls, however many conversations, how many qualifications? Can you do that today? Can you dedicate a block of time? Can you commit to 100 push-ups today? Can you commit to that? I mean, it becomes that simple. Can you do 50 setups today? Could you do that? Could you actually do that? Could you do that for 1 day? Could you do it 1 day? I didn't ask you about tomorrow. I didn't ask you about the rest of your life. I asked you, can you do that today? Breathe, release, and let go. No longer the mind-body connection, the events that shape the feelings. I'll see you here tonight. Today is 2 for Tuesday, year of our Lord, December 19th. We're closing in on the end of the year. For those of you who are committing to 2024 being your breakthrough year, have December 19th be your breakthrough day. If you are on my Facebook Live today and you've not accessed a free 20-minute coaching call, feel free to reach out to me and access that. I would be honored to speak to you. Or if you're an existing client and would like to talk to me about rehiring me, I have a unique marketing proposition for existing clients. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Breathe, release, and let go.